Hi and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to show you how to use my watercolor lettering kit to create some watercolor lettering in Procreate. So all of the brushes and textures that I'm going to be using come straight from that kit. So when I'm creating watercolor lettering with these brushes, I follow the same steps all the time. First, you're going to write out your word, then add color and blend them, lighten the inside, darken the edges, and add your textures and bleeds. I'm also going to take it another step further and I'm going to add some splatters, highlights, and a shadow. So if you're ready to create some lettering like this, let's get started. So first I'm going to start by duplicating the watercolor template that comes with the kit, and I'm just going to use that because it already has all the layers set up. And I've already sketched out the letter that I want to add in another document, so I'm just going to paste it above the background paper texture layer and lower the opacity. Then I'm going to use one of the lettering brushes to write out my word. So the kit comes with 4 different brushes, each have different textures when you write. This one that I'm using is the watercolor basic brush. It doesn't have texture, it is very opaque, but it does have an uneven edge that creates a really fun watercolor style letter. You can write out your lettering using white, but I'm going to be using black because the white won't show up well on camera. And because I used black after I finished writing, I had to go and invert the layer. But if you write in white, you won't have to do that part. So I've created this really fun flamingo inspired color palette, and I'm going to be using the colors from the top row to add color to the lettering. So you can select one of the wash brushes and you're just going to add colors, and remember to add these colors on the layer that is called color, otherwise you will have it showing up outside of the lettering like what happened to me just now. And depending on which color brush you use, you may need to go back in with a special effects brush and blend any areas where your colors meet with harsh lines. So on the layer called center, this is where we're going to be adding the light inside of our letters. So I'm using the special effects brush to just add in some white areas, mainly to the downstroke of the letters. There's no real pattern to it, you just add where you feel needs to be lightened. And you can always raise the opacity of that particular layer if you want your centers to be much brighter. Now we're going to darken our edges. So I'll be using the darker shades of each color along with the edge bleed brush to darken up the edges of the letters. You can also use the watercolor special effects brush to darken edges as well, but I just love how easy the edge bleed brush is for this particular step. And this brush is a very fun brush because when you're darkening the right side of the letter, you're going to always draw downwards, and when you're darkening the left side, you're going to draw upwards. It is a little tricky at first, but the more you use it, the more you get accustomed to this movement. The first color that I use to darken the edge is the color in the second row, but I then wanted to add just a little bit more variation, so I darkened that color a little bit more as well. And I just went back in and added that darker shade to a few more areas. Once you finish adding those darker edges, you can then use the special effects brush to just blend out some of the color into the letter. And I usually do this at areas where I've added just a little too much color and I want it to be a smoother transition from the dark edge into the center of the letter. So on the layer above, we're going to add our bleeds and our textures. So you can select any of the bleed or stamp brushes and just stamp them onto the canvas and arrange them however you'd like. Once you've arranged the bleed where you want it, you can then use the special effects brush to blend out some of the harsh edges. And at this point, your lettering is complete. But I like to add just a few more details to give it a little bit of dimension and make it pop from the background. So first, I'm going to add some splatters, and this is on the layer above everything that we've just finished, and the colors that I'm using are the ones in the palette, particularly the darker ones. Next, I'm going to add a shadow. To do this, duplicate the layer with the lettering and then invert that layer at the bottom so that it becomes black. Then you can drag that lettering in the direction that you want your shadow to be. Then I applied a Gaussian blur to kind of smooth out the edges a little so that they aren't too sharp. Tap on the layer icon for the lettering that is in white, tap on select. Then go to the shadow layer and tap clear. Once you're finished, only the shadow will remain. And then you can lower the opacity a bit to suit the color that you want it to be. So the final thing that I'm going to do is add some highlights, and I'm going to do this using the watercolor rough brush. And I really love how this creates a really streaky highlight and it looks as if it was done with a paint pen, similarly to the Posca pen that I like to use for my highlights when I'm doing this style of lettering. And I'm just going to be adding these white lines to the inside of the letters on the opposite side to the shadow. So once you've finished all of this, your lettering piece is now done. And I hope I was able to shed some light on how to use these brushes and how you can create super realistic watercolor lettering in Procreate. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you next time.